Hi, friends, and welcome back to Blade and Broom. I'm Laurelei Black, running once again for your favorite witchy aunt, mostly on a platform of witchy shenanigans and magical tomfoolery. I'm joined today by my friend G, who is one of the amazing magical folks that I've been wanting to introduce you all to. Um, we're going to have some more interviews kind of along these same lines where I just talk to amazing magical people that I've managed to meet along the way. So, G, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and talk with me. And I am going to go ahead and read your official bio into the record so that people have a better sense of who you are and what you're up to.
Wait, are you saying this is going on my permanent record?
It is. Because nothing ever goes away on the internet. So, yep, your permanent record. I have to put on my teacher glasses to really make that one stick. Okay, so G Antra is a self-taught multimedia artist and writer residing in Ellettsville, Indiana. They are unabashedly queer, a lover of horror, a spiritual occultist, and an experimental ceremonial magician. Their work always includes themes of horror, LGBTQIA++, and or the occult. Currently, they are working on several large projects, projects. Um, in terms of art, they're working on two oracle card decks and two tarot decks. And then in terms of writing, two forthcoming books. One is called Tumbling Down the Spiral, Art and Prose, which is anticipated soon-ish. We're going to hear more about that, I hope, later. And another one titled Adorn Thyself, Painted for the Gods. Again,
Hi.
thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I don't know if you've ever had a chance to really check out the channel before, but here at Blade and Broom, we mostly talk about witchcraft. Um, but we get into other magical shenanigans, other magical and occult areas besides witchcraft. And we're kind of all flavors of witchcraft, although I tend to focus more on traditional witchcraft because that's where I'm coming from. But as we're starting to do more interviews with folks, I know that I'm going to be talking to people with just a really wide variety of magical backgrounds. So I want to start there and ask you to tell us a little bit about your spiritual practice. And along those lines, I'm always curious about how people got involved with their path. So if you feel comfortable sharing, I would love to share I would love for you to share what kind of magic you do, how you got involved with it, what you call it, all those kinds of things.
Sure. Well, let's see. I started traipsing into the occult in 92. Um, my first book was Living Wicca by Cunningham. And I still have my copy.
Mhm.
And then my second book was Modern Magic by Donald Michael.
Oh, Dawn.
And from there, I started reading more towards ceremonial magic, things like that. Anything I could get my hands on, philosophy. Um, I learned about every religion I could get my hands on, and finally came up with the amalgamation that I practice, um, which is a lot of folk magic, Southern folk magic. Um, I've lived both in the Appalachians and in the swamps uh, through my younger life. So I picked up a lot in both. And then my studies in ceremonial magic with uh, OTO and just the Lama in general. And then my work in Cometicism, which is ancient Egyptian path. And that's where a lot of my stuff heavily lies, and everything else just kind of mixes in. But I firmly believe that magic is a evolving thing, and if you don't individualize your magic, it doesn't work as well for you, is my personal opinion at least.
I very much agree with that opinion. And one of the things that we talk about, even though we kind of focus on magic that is often called witchcraft here on this channel, and not everybody calls it by that name, even if they're practicing something that looks really similar. I agree, though, you can't pick up something straight off a shelf and expect it to work exactly that way for you. Um, that there is a lot in a magical practice of finding the right fit and creating something that works best for you. And I think because of that, sometimes naming our practices becomes challenging because it's
It
I practice Geacism or Lorelei, Lorelei craft. That's what I
yes.
do.
uh, uh yeah, I've gotten to where I've gotten very specific with my wording. That's why I call myself a experimental ceremonial magician, because I practice ceremonial magic, but I learn the rules enough to learn what I can break and what I can change. And then I mold it into this other thing, and then I experiment with it, which is the reason why ceremonial magic's always called to me, especially, anything that branches with Crowley, because his whole idea of approaching ritual and magic and the occult as science. And I'm very science minded in general. So that really clicked with me. And that's how I practice everything, because it's very much, if it works, it works, which is kind of chaos magic. But I want to know why it works, and I want to know if it'll continue to work. And that's where the experimental comes in.
I love it. The method of science, the art of
Aim of,
religion, or aim of religion. Yeah, aim of religion. Oh, I messed up the quote, but yeah, yeah, method of
it's
science.
okay. I mispronounce things and mess up quotes all the time. It's all good.
Words can be challenging, especially like on the spot. But yeah, I definitely I see what you're talking about, and I think ceremonial magic, sort of looking at magic more from a scientific perspective, does really allow for a lot of individual adaptation, and it also really kind of for people that are wanting more of that flexibility, but maybe feel conflicted about trying to adapt or adjust a cultural magical practice, it can really looking at like hermeticism and sort of ceremonial forms of magic can really be helpful because they are a bit divorced from a cultural context in a lot of ways. They're not entirely divorced from those cultural contexts, but you have to
Not entirely,
not
but
entirely, but you can see the evolution of how it's passed among multiple cultures before it ever got here to you. So it's like you said, once you learn the rules and learn the foundations of it, if you look at it with a sort of a judicious eye, you can see like, oh, this part can be adapted, this part can be changed. I can leave that out. It doesn't resonate, or I can add this in that maybe does come from my own cultural practice, without messing everything up,
it's
Um,
like an interchanging the variables in an equation.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy for it. Okay, so you and I have known each other for we can't remember 12 to 14 years. I feel like everything over a decade starts to go, I don't know, we've known each other for a while.
Yeah, pretty much. I have to stop and go, what year was that?
Yeah, and I can't remember, I do not remember if it was 2010 or 2012, um but I know where we met. I know how we met. And during that time, and of course, we met through a magical event that is still very much part of our lives. One that I have talked about on this channel before. So actually, and I am prepared to cut this part out if we need to. But are you comfortable with me saying that it was
Oh yeah,
okay? Cool.
I'm more than comfortable.
I,
I post about it all over
all the time.
Facebook and try. I've got new people coming next year, so
Oh, awesome.
yeah.
Yay. So we met at the Babylon Rising Festival, which I've been involved with since 2008 was my first year. And I came as a presenter myself and then got involved as an organizer. And now I'm one of the main leads working on retiring from that. But
2010 was my first VR.
okay, so we would have met in 2010 then, because we
That's
also,
why that's why I was like, I think it was 2010.
yeah, I believe, because I do believe we met your first year at BR. I remember that we have a mutual friend, somebody I've known very, very well since 2005, I think is when she and I met. And then she had known you through a totally different um, artistic expression. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
she specifically, like, that was her first year at the event too, but I had known her, I guess at that point only 5 years before that. And she dragged me over to you and was like, "You have to meet my friend."
Aw,
So that was how we met, was at the bonfire, through a mutual friend who was like, "You absolutely have to meet my friend." So, and during that time, like I remember our first meeting. I remember that you were in a very, we're going to talk a little bit through this interview about both visual art and performance art, but you were in a very, like, your magic blends so well with your art, which is one of the things that I'm so excited to talk to you about, because in the time that I've known you, you've always been a person whose life is really just brimming over with both magic and art, and they flow into each other in a way that I think is just really inspiring. So I've been blessed I have actually several pieces of your art in my home and in my temple space that I've acquired over the years. I don't know how aware of that you are. I hope it doesn't sound creepy.
I'm not real. I never really think about who has my art. It's like whenever Scott comes to festival, every day he's wearing a different shirt that has my art on it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
never think about how many of them he has until he does that.
It's funny because I don't even think that that clicked for me this year, but
Yeah, every day he was wearing a different shirt with my art on it.
that's wild. Yeah. Now that you say that, and I'm like picturing back to what I can remember of what people were wearing, because that doesn't always stand out. But I do remember that I remember thinking that he had really cool t-shirts. So,
All mine.
all yours. Yeah, that's really exciting. And you're one of the few people that has at least a piece of my art as well, because
I have one piece of your art.
yeah, which is an unusual thing, because I don't create a lot of art these days, and I have tended to hoard it. I tend to keep it. I'm like, oh, I made this. I love it. It can't go anywhere.
This
So
is mine forever.
mine forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that happen to you too? I know you create a much
Oh
larger volume of art than I do.
my God. Yes. Yes. And I jokingly say that all of my art is for sale, but I price it according to how much I like.
You're like, it's for sale, but you're gonna have to really make it worth my
Yeah,
energy to give it up.
you've got to make me willing to let you have this
Right.
because I really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I do. I definitely get that. And there are, yeah, just having encountered your art, there are some pieces that I know that you've made that I'm like, I can see why you would never give that one to anybody.
There are
Worth
pieces I made
$10,000.
that I forget I've made, or I forget who has it until they say something to me. Um, a brother that goes to that same festival, his first year, he bartered a piece of his stained glass with me for one of my paintings.
Oh,
And it still hangs in his house. He sent me a picture of it the other day. And it was a painting I did in '01 called Balefire.
oh,
And it was a giant fire. And the figures were like this big compared to like a fire this big dancing around
yeah.
the fire. And it was night with stars and trees. And it was just a bunch of little bitty figures dancing around this giant fire. And he bought it instantly. Well, he was like, any piece of my stained glass you want. And I was like,
That's
but I,
awesome.
so I have a really cool compass that he made.
That
But
is,
yeah, I forget I even made that piece until he sent me a picture of it. And I was like, oh, I forgot about
I had something similar where I had painted um, Bridget at the forge, like hammer and anvil.
it.
Um,
Nice.
that 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 image of Bridget, sleeves rolled up and getting into the work, and I quite loved it, but and it's one that when I do remember that I made it every now and then, I'm like, oh, do I even have a picture of it? I don't even know if I have a picture of it anymore. But one of my good friends fell in love with it and was like, you have to let me buy that from you. I need her in my house. And I believe she still has her. I'll have to check. But if not, I'm sure Bridget has found her way to where she needs to be. But it's
Like she does.
yeah. But I had forgotten about that one for probably a decade. And then the friend sent me a picture of it in her home and I was like, oh yeah. I remember when that one came through. So what is the artistic process like for you? And I know that that's
Oh,
a
Lord.
very complicated question, but
It is a
what is the
loaded
process?
question. It really depends on what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Um, I do several different forms of art. So when I'm making oracle cards or tarot cards, uh, those they always start with one piece of art that just comes to me as this epiphany of, that would be really cool. And I create it. And before I'm done with it, I realize what I'm doing and that it is part of a deck. And from that point on, to be completely honest with you, I dream making them and hanging them.
That's awesome.
And they are completed and hanging in my head before I even sketch them. And that's with like oracle pieces, tarot pieces, divination pieces. They're 100% created in my head before I even start a prototype. Um, my paintings are completely thought to canvas. I very rarely sketch a painting beforehand. It's straight blank canvas. I start hitting it with paint. My other art, my monsters and stuff like that, it's this the weird things that I create in my head randomly. I'll take ideas like, a merfolk or something and just creepify it. I have one piece that's the little purple creatures at the bottom of Ursula's cave.
I do. Yes. Yeah.
I have a piece that's one of those, but a more realistic version, and it's rather creepy.
All the poor unfortunate souls.
Yeah, I named it poor unfortunate. This poor unfortunate soul.
That's awesome. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and I will be throughout the interview, I'll be overlaying or adding in some pictures of art of yours that you've shared with me so that our audience is getting to see some of what you do too. Um,
Good deal.
I love this idea that for you that the art kind of leaps out of your head like Athena fully formed springing from the head of Zeus, right? Like just battle ready and ready to go. The art like comes out of you. It's like a fully formed idea right from the start and you're just trying to bring it into reality.
The problem is sometimes is bringing it into reality because since it's already fully formed in my head, I have to fumble through and figure out how to make that in physical format.
I get and then it becomes a problem solving. expeditious.
Very
Yeah.
much, very much, especially when it's something to do with costuming or prop work. I just make it so.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of my drag props, upon close inspection, look kind of scary, but the farther you are away, the better the illusion is.
I totally get that. As you know, I've got a background in the stage as well. I was a theater teacher for several years, and what you do on the stage, like you've got to make it visible from the back of the house, right? Like the back of the audience needs to be able to see the thing, but they're not going to be seeing all those little fine details. So, um, sometimes it's just a very different thing. It's amazing what gets made out of styrofoam and duct tape, like how much you can do with just those two materials.
I made a drag guitar. It looked like a flying bee. And it was a piece of plywood that was cut to be a flying bee and wrapped with duct tape and spray painted.
Cool.
And I attached a mermaid skeleton from the craft store to it, and then made the rib cage where the strings attached to, and filled the rib cage with roses, and then covered the entire thing with rhinestones.
That sounds
And
incredible.
it's now my guitar on stage. It's a piece of duct tape. It's duct tape and plywood.
And a mermaid skeleton from
And a mermaid skeleton.
That's awesome. That sounds incredible. Um, where do you feel like you find your inspiration for your subjects? It does sound like they find you more than anything, but are there like concepts or artists or movements within art that you kind of credit for your style or pieces of your style? Anything along those lines?
100%. I started out learning how to draw by drawing metal album covers.
Cool.
So like Black Sabbath, Dio, Judas Priest, Queensryche, just album covers. I taught myself how to draw human hands, drawing the album cover for Sacred Heart Idea, because it's hands holding a crystal ball with a dragon inside of it holding a heart. So there's monster hands and human hands. Um, so, that kind of early on inspired like how I do things. And then I'm really big into comic books, but like the darker comic books like Dark Horse and Erotic and Chaos and things like that. So like Lady Death and Dawn and the darker uh, some of Glenn Danzig's work. Uh, and then from there, I got into a lot of the a lot of the bleh, words are not working. A lot of the like deep illustrative art from things like graphic novels. Um, and a lot of my ink art uses a lot of that heavy black, heavy contrast. I like the heavy black, the heavy contrast, the splash of color, like you would
Mhm.
see in something like the movie Sin City,
Yeah.
that kind of art in general. And then surrealism art. I absolutely love surrealist art. I love the use of gestalt in art. The A bunch of little bitty different things when you pull back creates a different whole. I absolutely love that. And surrealism plays with that heavily.
That's awesome. Thank you for that insight. Yeah. Then that it's funny now that you say those things as I think about your art. I absolutely can see every single one of the influences that that you mentioned. I definitely see that.
But
So
like and stuff like Brahm, Frank Frazetta,
yeah,
Julie Bell,
uh-huh.
um, Boris, the the book cover art on the Tor fantasy novels
Mm-hmm.
from the 70s,
Yeah.
the 80s. The sci-fi art on like the Heinlein novels and things like that from the same time period
Right.
um, were other stuff that I drew a lot of as a
Yeah.
kid.
I get that. It's funny actually that you mentioned Frank Frazetta. Not that it's funny that he's included in that list because he's such a powerful and well-known artist. We just last year for Yule, I actually got Joe, my husband. I don't always talk about him on the channel, right? But everybody knows I have one, and I do sometimes refer to him. But I got him a print of the Prisoner in the Horned Helmet
Oh,
art that Frank
nice.
Frazetta did, and of course, and you've seen that he has a horned helmet. So we've got them like mounted together in
Nice.
our clubhouse room that is sort of our social gathering room. When you come over, I'll have to be sure to point it out because we'll have to get you down for a visit at some point. But um, okay, so we've talked a lot sort of art from a just a straight art perspective, but I'm also very curious about the magical, spiritual, ritualistic elements in your artistic process. If those exist for you, I know that there's
Very much.
a big place where they blend for sure in the content of your art. But yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, it depends on the stuff, of course. But whenever I'm making any kind of divination piece or any of my magical intended pieces, like all of my tarot cards, all of the oracle cards, all of the spirit boards I've made, uh, all of the things like that, the scrying bowls that I've designed in my head that I'm about to make, that I'll tell you about in a minute because I think you'll enjoy them. Um, I this room is my studio. I call it the morgue just because I have a Halloween sign that says the morgue that we put on the door laughingly when I took this room over. And it just became the house thing to call it the morgue. And it's translated over to where if I say it on my Twitch channel, everybody knows what I'm talking about. So that's amusing. But I have various altars in this room because this is my personal private space. No one else in the house comes in here except for the cats because they're cats. Uh, and I have my art altar that's always going when I'm doing art, and it's dedicated to Tahuti. And then I have my personal altar and I have my ancestor altar all in this room as well. And this room is heavily warded. It's sectioned off from the rest of the house energy wise. So whenever I am working on any of those pieces, I set whatever altar would work best for it and set sacred space. Well, this is always kind of sacred space, but set specific sacred space. And even when I'm live on Twitch, if I'm working on tarot or oracle, I have an altar going somewhere and I'm actively doing energy work,
I love that. I love that.
which
So
is
you're
why the tarot cards are taking so long. Um, because there are 78 of them, 79 because I've added an extra card that you can use if you so will. Um, and they're a foot and a half by 2 foot, the originals. So like they're about anywhere from 35 to 60 hours of work on each one. And it's energy work for that specific card, which means I get to live that card for the entire time I'm working.
There are some cards that would be a real blessing for, and some cards that I do not envy you that process.
Yeah, and I'm on number 57.
Which card
I've
is that?
done I uh, well, I've completed the entire major arcana. I've completed all of the court cards. I'm in the pip cards now.
Okay.
I say pip
Yeah.
loosely because I'm not doing them as pips.
Right.
But right now, I am finishing up Eight of Mind, which is Eight of Swords.
Okay. Oh, okay. And you were doing that during a Mercury retrograde? That's
Yes, I was.
just extra painful.
Well,
But you really feel it
when
for bringing out the art, right?
when I got into the last 25 cards, I pulled one of my tarot decks out and I pulled all of the cards I had left out of the deck, shuffled them, and laid them out in a spiral and then wrote them down as a list. And that's the order they're being created in.
Nice.
Regardless of what's going on in the world around me, that's the order they're being created in because that's what was given. So that's, yeah.
I would be really curious. I don't know if you're keeping any kind of magical journal or anything along those lines as you're working, but I'd be really curious about how, because that is a very divinatory process that you've done for just deciding how to approach the cards, sort of letting the hand of fate or the universe or the egregore that is the cards, however you want to look at that, decide the timing of of the progression, at least. Like they're not necessarily telling you it's I'll, honestly, I know that art does tell you how long it's going to take, but you don't always know that going into it. Like, I'm only going to
Oh,
take you a week
no.
versus I'm going to take you 3 months.
Yeah,
um,
facts. Well, the funny thing is with the Tarot of Perception, which is the one I'm so actively working on. Uh, the different, my brain chunked them up into three different sets. I had Major Arcana, then I had court cards,
mhm,
then I had everything else,
right.
and that's the way my brain sectioned it up. And the deck started. This is a funny story. The deck started because I read Set and Ampu by Bill Duvendek. And there's a section in there that talks about the correlation of Sacred Heart symbology and Anpu or Anubis. And the moment I read that, the image for my death card came into my head.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
and I went in my studio, and I don't suggest this, and got the biggest piece of paper I owned and sketched it out. Um, that took me 45 hours to finish that piece.
Yeah.
And in the middle of it, I was on a late night phone call with my best friend, and he was knitting and I was working, and we were sending pictures back and forth. And about halfway through the card, he goes, you know, that's a really good imagery of death. And I said, yeah, I agree. If I was ever to make a tarot deck, that's what my death card would look like. And then we both went silent. And he's
Guess who
like,
just got
what
an
you just
assignment?
said, right? And I'm like, I know, just let me process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny what you just described is very similar to how some of the assignments I've been given also feel, where you're just like, yeah, if I was gonna do, oh crap, I guess I'm doing that now. I have been given a task and I accept. Um, so
I
yeah,
have chose to accept my mission.
yeah.
But with the major arcana, those came to me card by card and not in order. I
Okay.
would dream drawing it and painting it and hanging it up, and the next day I would sketch it. And so those just came in the most random of orders. Um, and then the court cards, I methodically did those by suit in order. And then the rest of the cards, I did the whole shuffle and layout thing.
Yeah. Wow. So tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, and this wasn't one of the pre-planned questions, but it's just for clarity's sake. for myself and for the audience. You have the Oracle of Perception and you have the Tarot of Perception. And as I understand it, the Oracle of Perception is the one that's done, and it was the one that the Kickstarter just ended for successfully, I might add. Congratulations. Yeah, there it is. And then the Tarot of Perception, you've just mentioned you're still working on it. You're in the 50s on the cards.
Correct. Correct. Um, the Oracle of Perception did not take me as long. It took me a year and a half. You saw me working on Aphrodite at festival.
I did.
Um, well, no, Aphrodite's for the Walking with the Gods. Sorry, but you didn't see me doing that, but you were there, I believe, when I asked Bovon if I could use their image for the inspiration. And that is one of the cards in this deck is that card. So it was I started it spring last year.
The
And
Oracle of Perception.
yeah, the Oracle. Um sorry. Yeah, the Oracle of Perception. I started spring of last year. Um the Tarot of Perception I started in June of 2019.
I knew it's been a long project. I remembered that it was pre-pandemic when you had started it. So, what is the, I don't, obviously they're connected by this concept of perception. Are there shared cards between the two decks? Are they totally
No,
different cards, different ideas?
they're completely different cards, they're completely different ideas, but they will work well as a paired team. Um, I make things I want, and then if anybody else wants it, cool. And I started one of my first things I ever did when I started getting into any kind of occultism was I learned the tarot cards. It was one of the very first things I ever did. So I've been reading tarot since '92. And I wanted a deck that did what I wanted it to do. So I started create. That's what I'm doing with the tarot deck, and I want an oracle deck that paired well with it as a companion because I do paired readings
Hmm.
where I'll take uh, a card from two different decks and pair them together in positioning, and they work like binary stars to each other in the situation, with one being the dominant energy and one being the undercurrent energy. And that's dictated from the get go by which deck we've decided is which.
Hmm.
And so I specifically created decks that would do that well together.
I love that.
And since it was the first Oracle deck I made, and I was making it to later be a companion deck to the Tarot, it got the Oracle of Perception to pair with the Tarot of Perception.
Very nice.
And it's all of my decks are about, perception, because what your perception literally creates the world around you.
It's the kind of the foundation of magic in that way.
Exactly.
But and really the foundation of everything. Our perception is the foundation of our experience. So I love that. I am really excited. I was one of the folks that backed your Kickstarter for the Oracle of Perception, so I am so excited about the cards coming. And I think I picked a package that has some extra bits too, some stickers and goodies and
I
things.
have the stickers with me.
Oh, those are cool. Oh yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous.
And then these are from the Oracle deck.
Very nice. Yeah. Oh, oh my goodness.
And then these are from the Tarot deck. There's the Magician,
Very cool.
the Reborn, the Devil,
Yeah.
Death, and the Fool.
Oh wow. Those are so
And
much.
they're thick vinyl. They're the same consistency as like a really thick, good quality bumper sticker,
Very
that thick
nice.
vinyl. And they're like dishwater and outside rated, or
Oh.
dishwasher and outside rated.
Oh, so you can
I
put them on
wanted
like a water
something,
bottle and not worry about it
I
peeling or
wanted
fading.
something I could put on a water bottle.
Nice.
Molly writes art.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've made the mistake of putting a lot of my favorite stickers on um, like laptops and things that get replaced really sooner than later in some cases. Like a laptop's only gonna, like, even if you nurse one along, it's still gonna, you're not gonna have it forever. Like it is not a lasting thing. So I
It
need
is
to I
not.
need to switch to water bottle stickers because that I carry around everywhere and I'll have the same one for a decade. So
And then I got the postcards in too. Um, those were part of the Kickstarter. These are for the other Oracle deck that I just finished.
very nice. And that's the Walking with the Gods Oracle.
This is the Walking with the Gods Oracle. And I did these because I wanted a deck that would be good for working with individual energies.
Hmm.
Also, it could be used as a divination or a meditative deck, but each card can also be used as iconography for that entity.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I know you were selling some of the prints, and I think you've done some hand embellishment. So the very first one that you just showed of the postcards was the Babylon card, and I think I have print number one of 11 of the ones that you had at Babylon
Oh,
Rising this
yeah.
year. So
They're
I'm
on
excited.
the pearlized paper.
It's beautiful. It has a glitteriness to it that's just the sort of opalescent shine that comes through. They're very cool. So
I love that paper for gods and venerated entities because it gives them that like ethereal feel.
it really does. It really does. And it brings up something interesting, I think, for folks that are maybe watching this and starting to go, I have artistic ideas and I'm just maybe getting involved with magic. And I didn't know that they could go together like that. I didn't know,
They can
besides
go together
content wise,
heavily.
they go together very heavily. And really, even the materials that you're choosing, the medium that you're working with, the foundation of what the art's going to go on, whether that's a pearlized piece of paper or I've known artists who have maybe like pressed their own paper or which is a crafty step that is sounds beyond me. Like frankly, I don't I
It's
don't have
not
that
an
time.
easy thing. I learned how to do that when I was in like the eighth grade, and it is not an easy task.
No, it
And
doesn't look
people
like
who
it.
can do it well are wizards.
Yeah, and that's just it, right? Like I feel like it really sort of brings back to our awareness that the magic of creation is magic. It is we're sort of creator beings ourselves, and we're like the demiurges of our own realities, which we've already been talking about.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. We really are. And to create art of any kind is to bring something new and unique into the world it is an act of birth. It is an act of yeah, just creation. I almost can't come up with a better word for it than that, but it's this magical process, I think, that I don't think everybody who engages in it realizes the magic that they're actually working. And I think the magician who does realize can be an even more powerful force with what they're creating because they understand how the pieces work together.
It's
Um,
why I like giving workshops at festivals on how to create your own magical tools.
yeah,
Because whereas, yes, I create magical tools and, I like being able to sell my stuff. I will 100% sit down and take the time to teach you how to make one so that you can personalize it and make it stronger for you. And if you can't make it yourself, store bought's fine. But I do like trying to get people to at least like maybe embellish the store bought thing a little bit, do something to personalize it, because that act of doing something to it creates something more unique and more yours, and it puts your energy into it just by the sheer act of altering.
Was it you that I was talking with, or was it somebody else who, when they buy or are given cards, that they, if there's a border on the card, that they cut the border off? Was that you, or was that somebody
No,
else?
that's not me.
Somebody else, yeah. But they were talking about exactly the same philosophy behind it. Of, I didn't make these cards, and in their mind, they're like, I'm not capable. Like, making a tarot deck is beyond my skill set. I'm not ever going to make a tarot deck, but I can personalize the tarot decks that I have by altering the cards somewhat, looking at just the imagery by taking off the border that surrounds it. Um, or I've known people who have gotten embellishment pens and like added embellishments to the art on the tarot decks or the oracle cards that they're using as a way to sort of connect with them in their own way and to really put something of themselves into the deck because it's their tool, and
Exactly. And those are great ideas on things to do with cards.
yeah. Do you do other things with cards? What do you do? What
Um,
kinds of things do you
I
do?
I don't really change my cards. That's the one thing I've never really altered.
Hmm.
Um, I will each deck has its own thing, especially like Oracle decks, because each one is its own little closed system.
It's true.
Um, but I'll study that deck specifically, and then I'll just incorporate it into my world reading with it the way I do any deck.
Hmm.
But I learn its little idiosyncrasies.
It
And
is, yeah.
like I've got one I just recently backed on Kickstarter that I received. That's the cryptid tarot,
Oh, cool.
and every single card is a different cryptid from around the world.
That's awesome.
So all 78 cards are there's 78 different cryptids in the deck. It's amazing.
That's wild.
Um I have the Starman Tarot is one of my favorites, the David Bowie. And
Hmm.
I kind of learn each deck's personality because I fully believe and feel and know that each of my decks has its own personality. And I pick which deck I use to answer my question the same way I'd pick which one of my best friends I'd ask. Which one's going to give me the tone that's going to tell me what I need to hear without being too mean about it?
Right. Yeah, yeah. I get that. Yeah. And sometimes,
Not what I want to hear, but what I need to hear. And please don't backhand me in the process because I have
right.
decks that are like that.
I do too. I do too. I actually every now and then I have there's an oracle deck that I use sometimes that's called the Rebel deck. I call it Sassy Unicorns. And I think
Nice.
actually there's a friend that called them Sassy Unicorns. She was reading with them first before I had seen them. And they actually, so the images on the deck, they're not image heavy, they're text heavy. But the sort of logo for the deck is a little cartoonish unicorn with the circle and bar through it. Like, this is not unicorn. And I think it is unicorn. It's just unicorn that's poking you with its horn a little bit because these cards tell you in no uncertain terms, and they can be a little harsh, but I read them as funny. Like, they're just funny to me. Um, so it'll say things like, um, move on, stop thinking about that person. They are not thinking about you anymore. You need to move on with your life, or or you need to move. Seriously, you've been sitting on that couch for a month and a half. You haven't washed. You haven't. you, you
So
haven't
they give
left.
big sister energy.
They really do. They really do have big sister energy. Yes. Yeah. Because how they read to me is like, I love you, but you're a hot mess right now. So
Yeah.
clean yourself up, or sometimes it's you need a hug. I'm going to give you one, and then I'm going to assign you with the task of giving yourself some hugs for the foreseeable
Right.
future. So I read with those for my cousin a couple of years ago, and she was like, "Holy moly, I needed that so bad." She's like, "I need somebody in my life that'll just tell it to me straight. Everybody is always, walking on eggshells, maybe." And she really likes that. But there's that tone, and finding the right tone either for yourself or for the person you're reading for. If it's for somebody else, you don't want to break somebody with the advice that they're actually looking for. Um,
Right. Right.
you still want to get them the real accurate message, but you're not trying to crumble their world with it.
Right. Right. You're sometimes harsh truths can be given in a gentler packaging.
They really can. Yeah, a spoonful of sugar and all that. um, so I know we've talked about at least one tarot deck and two oracle decks. And I remember from your bio that you're working on another tarot deck as well. What are your tarot systems? You've already mentioned that like the eight of mind as opposed to the eight of swords. How do your decks compare with sort of traditional tarot, like a Rider Waite or even a Thoth deck, which isn't exactly traditional tarot, but it is sort of what I use as my standard deck?
um, they're heavily Rider Waite Smith leaning.
Okay.
Um, they do have leniencies in them so that they can be used with the thought system to a degree,
Hmm.
because the thought system changes the layout of the court cards and also changes the way some of the major arcana are looked at, especially number wise.
Hmm.
With the switching of what is it? I think it's justice and strength.
Justice and strength, yeah, do get switched. And then there are a lot of different naming and really sort of different themes that get pulled out in some of the cards. Um, Lust instead of
So
strength. And
yeah. So what I did was I changed the symbology to a degree, the visual symbology uh, of the of the four suits. Um, Wands became the suit of sight and are symbolized by eyes. When you break down the body to the elemental attribution, eyes are given fire, wands are fire. And there's a onion layers of why. Um, then swords are the mind, intellect, intuition, you know, those aspects. So I changed them to anatomical brains and it's suit of mind.
nice.
And then suit of cups became anatomical hearts and it's suit of hearts. And then disc, pinnacles, coins, whatever you wish to call that suit. In my deck, it's the suit of craft and it's hands,
Hmm.
because that's your earth suit. It's very Malkuth. It's very physical plane. And one of the first things we do to denote mine as a child is to grab with our hands. And that suit deals with career and money and living situation and everything very basic Malkuthian.
Hmm.
And then with my court cards, I changed the names. They're apprentice, master, matron, patron instead of page, knight, queen, king.
Hmm.
And then a few of the major arcana, I changed the names of them and drastically the imagery to fit more in line of what taking the meaning of the card and putting it for a visual that works within my sphere of practice. One of the major ones for that is judgment. It's not called Judgment in my deck. It's called the Reborn.
Oh, yeah.
And it is actually, I've got it on a sticker. It is a phoenix in flight.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Because that's what that card means. And the symbology of the final judgment and the angels blowing the trumpet doesn't fit within my practice because my practice does not have any basis in Christianity.
Yeah. That makes good sense. And I love I love that that's part of what you're doing is to reframe it in a way that does make sense for sort of the spiritual worldview that you carry. Um, and that I'm guessing a whole lot of other, it'll be more similar to other pagans and magicians for the most part, especially if they're not working from a very Christian system, which a lot of us aren't. Definitely the folks watching my channel probably are not.
Um, I did not put numbers physically on the major arcana cards.
Okay.
That way, you can move them around in ordering to whatever you see fit. You
Yeah.
can use the Rider Waite Smith uh, system. You can use the Thoughts system. Um, you can use your own system because I haven't numbered them.
I love that.
And we're individuals, so why isn't our path of the Fool individuals? It always starts at the Fool,
Hmm.
but our paths are individualized. So I gave the ability to individualize the path visually with the deck
I love that.
by
And
not giving numbers. I'll
that's
talk about the numbers in the booklet because if you're using them in the numbered system for the Rider Waite Smith, the numbers matter. But outside of that, you know, but those people already, the people that are using it for that, in my opinion, already know what number which card is.
right. Yeah. If the number, if you're tied into the numerological associations of the cards, you're already tapped into that particular stream of like that current of the magic. So you probably don't need
Yeah,
to be
so you
told what
don't
numbers
need
are.
the
Yeah.
yeah, you don't need a two on the high priestess. You know the
Right.
high priestess is two, if
Yeah.
that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, but I made like minor changes here and there.
Hmm.
Um, strength. In my deck, I renamed it Fortitude. But that is one of the names that was originally used for it. So it's not very much of a name change. But visually, I did change it. I made the form on it is the beast because the whole point is taming the inner beast because everything to do with the major arcana is about internal work.
Right.
And so instead of, the maiden subduing the lion, she is the lion. And she's holding out a chalice that has a serpent, wrapped up. So she subdued herself and the beast of the serpent, which is knowledge.
That's awesome.
And I wanted to give a visual of the coupling of internal animalistic personality versus external knowledge personality and how you have to balance both of them to walk a complete line.
So good.
And that's strength.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I can't. Okay, so I cannot wait to get my hands on these cards. I know that for the tarot, there is still a need to wait. So I will patiently wait, but I am very excited about
I'm
actually getting to
working
see them.
diligently, I swear.
No pressure, no pressure. I know they'll come out when they're ready. Like I get that that's how that works, but I am one of the many people that are anxiously anticipating getting to work with these cards. We mentioned earlier that the Oracle of Perception is done. That's the one that the Kickstarter just concluded on. They're getting ready to ship here depending on when this video airs, it may be very close to when they're shipping. Can people still purchase those?
Yes.
How do they get involved with your decks?
I will be creating a listing for them on my website um, once I have them in my hands
Gotcha.
because I've got a list and everything set up for the people that have purchased through Kickstarter, through their pledges, and those go out first. And after all of that's done, and after everything that's already spoken for is done, then I will inventory everything, and the stickers, postcards, and decks will be available on my website.
That's awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is when they become available on your website, I'll update the links that are going to be in the description box below this video so that people who are coming across this video after that date can just click on the link. And then I plan on doing an unboxing when mine come. So when I do
That's
that, I'll
exciting.
also link back and send you the links and everything too. But that way,
That's
if
awesome.
yeah, thank you. I figure if folks are watching it and they're like, I want these as well. I need my hands on these amazing cards that they can have some instant gratification um, in regards to that. So we'll make sure all those links are there. Um, if you're up for it today, I had mentioned this ahead of this talk that I might ask you to do a little three-card poll. Would you be interested in doing something like that for the viewers here on this channel?
100% cool with that. I would
Awesome.
love to
Thank
do
you.
that.
Yay. Um, so I had recommended a certain process, but that doesn't have to be the one that you use if you have something else in mind, because I know obviously you are a skilled, masterful even card reader. You don't need me how to tell you how to do it. So you tell us what,
I like your idea of doing a 3 card pull. On my Patreon, I do a monthly card pull where I will and it's for some of the higher tiers, but I'll do a monthly card pull where I'll pull just one card and you know energy to look at for your month. But with something like this, a 3 card pull would be great. The great thing about the Oracle deck is it's not really a divination deck. It's more of a reading the energies around the situation, reading the room,
yeah,
basically. So yeah, a 3 card pool would be great.
awesome. Awesome. Well, I will let you. You might need to, I know you might need to switch your camera angles and all of
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. So we'll give you a moment to do that and we'll come back with the magic of post-production that we're already on it when you're once you're set up.
awesome sauce.
Okay.
Alrighty. So this 10 I will be creating and providing later. This is the only one in existence. It was a stretch goal that we didn't hit. So like I said, I created cards that I wanted.
Hmm.
So these are casino quality linen.
Nice.
So they slide like a good deck of poker cards.
That's awesome.
Laurelei, I'm going to have you help me out here.
Okay.
I've split this up into 3. Have me put them together however you wish with left, center, right.
Okay. So let's put the center on the bottom and then the right hand side stack on top of that. And then obviously the left, well, no, maybe not obvious, the left hand side on top of that.
So we have the reflection, the ruler,
Nice.
and the sacrifice. Now, what this shows to us, the energies at play that need to be attention paid to, or the reflection. The reflection makes us ask questions like, what internalized things am I projecting into the world around me purposefully? What ones am I projecting into the world around me unconsciously? How are my internal workings reflecting on the outside world, and how is the outside world altering my internal workings? It's walking up to the mirror and facing yourself comparatively to that which is around you. The ruler brings to mind the questions of that which I rule. What are the consequences of my actions, and what are the benefits of my actions? Those who rule me, what are the consequences and benefits of their actions? Also, the ruler makes us realize that the first duty of a ruler is service to others.
Very much so.
To be a leader, to be a ruler, to be someone that gathers a group together, the first responsibility is to those which you rule. So this card brings to mind the idea of, when dealing with that which you're in charge of in your world, are you a good caregiver? Are you a good model for those you are in charge of? Because that's your first duty. And then the sacrifice reminds us of everything in life has a price. What are you sacrificing? What is being sacrificed for you? Is it worth what you're getting in return? It makes you evaluate the energy you're spending, the energy you're sending into the world around you, because everything is an energy exchange. And you need to pay attention to how you spend your energy, how you spend your time, because time is the only asset in this world that we can't replenish.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a basic 3 card pull with this.
Thank you so much. So, the way I'm sort of framing or thinking of this is that anybody who's watching this gets to ponder those cards for themselves and sort of this was a reading for all of us, right? So there were definitely things that I got for
Yes.
myself out of the message. So,
This
but
was
I
a
don't think it's just for me.
general read the room,
Read the room.
as just a general energies at play.
Yep. So if you're watching right now, you're in the room. Um, thank you. Thank you. That was I just really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I love seeing cards in action, not like I love beautiful cards and I've gone through phases where I collected lots of decks. But to me, it's like you mentioned, they're a tool. You're making tools for use. And if um, we have to find the ways that make sense for us to interact with a deck that we really feel drawn to. And sometimes it's for divination and oracle, and sometimes, as you said, like with your walking with the gods oracle cards and that type of thing, that there's the opportunity for them to be iconography as well. There's lots of ways to use them in magic, even for like spell casting and actually doing operations. But for me, first and foremost, it usually comes down to, can I read with these cards?
Right,
And
right.
and
And
I can tell I'm going to be able to read with these cards because they're already speaking to me. So, oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I love uh there's so much story that comes through, I feel like, just in these different faces, you know? Oh yeah. Yes.
There's Bowen.
Yep. That's him. Oh yeah. So that brings up another good question that I feel like I partially know the answer to, but also partially don't, and people might be curious about. Obviously, as I was just saying, there's a lot of personality that comes through on the faces that are in the cards. Who are the
Mhm.
models? I mean, not by name. You don't have to say by name, but are these people that you know and have worked with? Obviously, you mentioned Vovin, so that's
Several
somebody we
of
both know.
them, several of them are,
Hmm.
but not all of them. Most of them are just personifications of energy.
Hmm.
The Wounded Healer, the model for that, his name is Eric Schultz.
Hmm.
And then let's see. The Question, the model for that is Shane Alexander Ware.
Yes.
The model for the Oath is Joe C. Spalding.
Okay.
The guide is myself.
Nice. Yes. Perfect. That's perfect.
Um, I did that on purpose. I giggled when I did it. And then the inspiration is Vovin Luncheon.
Yeah. Oh.
And that's for these cards.
Hmm.
Um, in the tarot deck, it's there's a lot of them. I'm going to go ahead and switch the camera back
Yeah,
real quick.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing that reading and for showing us all the cards too. That's amazing. Um, so, and you said so some of them are based on actual people that you know, have a relationship with of some kind, whether that's a friend or a partner along those lines. Some of them are are they just the faces that showed up in your head as those
They
personifications
are
of the
the
energy?
they are the faces that showed up in my head when I meditated on the energy I wanted that card to be.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And truly magical to me because that is not how art works for me. Like that's not how my brain works. I can't if I can't see it, I can't draw it, which is
Fair.
unfortunate. So, but I do a
Now,
lot of collage creating and that kind of thing and using reference images to go, I want these eyes, but this shape of the face and this
I
this
do
hair,
that
you know.
with a lot of stuff. I do that with a lot of stuff. It's easier for me to create faces in my mind when I'm doing something like an oracle deck or something like that because I don't know. I go into a meditative headspace and the images form.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it could be an entity coming through to me. It could just be my brain putting something together. I really don't know. I just know that that's how it works. Um, Now with the tarot deck, uh, the majority of the major arcana are people I know.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
Um, the magician card is Bill Duvendak.
Nice.
The high priestess card is I used a reference photo of myself from
Hmm.
behind. Um, Fortitude, I kind of based off of Annie Lennox's face because she was kind of a symbol of strength and fortitude to me as a teenager.
Yes.
Um, we joke around that all drag performers have a diva. Mine is Annie Lennox.
I love that. I love that.
um, Temperance is my friend James. The Chariot is a brother. The Empress is one of my drag sisters. The Emperor is one of my comets in my poly world.
Very
There's
nice.
there's a lot. I would actually have to like sit down and look at them individually. But yeah, if it shows a person's face, it's a person in that deck.
That's awesome. I think that's really cool, honestly. I don't know how much. Um, I know that I hear a lot from artists and from writers, which are just artists with words. But I hear a lot from creators about how much of their work really is pulling out sort of pieces of themselves, and also how inspired, and I know this is true for me, how inspired I am in terms of character creation by the personality of a friend or an acquaintance, somebody that I've encountered. And I know that obviously by the time it makes it onto the page for me, that's not the same person. You're not, if you're reading one of my novels, it is not a one for one translation of, and then G
Right.
did this, and then so and so did that. Like, that's
You
not how
can't
that
do the
works.
TV trope of everybody's reading it going, "Hey, look, it's you."
Yeah. Well, so, and I know for myself on, and I'm curious if it's worked this way for you, places where you can absolutely see the imprint or the reflection or the outline of the person that you took inspiration from. Um,
Yes.
how does that play out? How have you found that that's played out with, well, and maybe we don't know yet because not a lot of people have gotten to use your cards yet because they're still being created. It'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback you get from people who know the faces, right? I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to it
it'll
because I
be
know some of the faces,
interesting. It'll be interesting because I'm going to have feedback from people that don't have any idea,
right?
and feedback from people that know the faces. People that are in the deck have backed the Kickstarter.
Really?
So they're going to be using decks that have their face in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm excited to find that out. Like, because Vovan and Joe have both backed the Kickstarter. So
That's awesome.
they've got decks coming.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Um,
Now, have you
and
told
then,
everybody? Oh, I'm
oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. I get permission before I use someone's image like that.
Yeah.
I will reach out and ask permission specifically for the kind of art, sometimes even that I want to use someone's image for. Um, if it's just a basic, hey, I want to draw this, this inspires me to want to draw,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, hey, can I draw this picture?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like, well, the very first one I did for the tarot deck that I had to ask for consent was from Bill.
Yeah.
And so I reached out and I went, hey, I grabbed these three-ish pictures off your Facebook for good facial references. Is it okay if I use them as a reference to draw the magician card for my tarot deck?
Mm-hmm.
And he came back and said, oh, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if someone says no, then I don't. I asked someone to be the chariot and they said no. They didn't feel that they were at the right place in their life right now to embody that energy in a card for other people.
Okay.
And I went, you know what? Fair and understood. And I asked someone else.
I love that. I love that. It's interesting too because like I knew that there was an aspect of, I don't know if it was composition or energy coming through on that magician card. I recognized like, oh, I know that person. But because and you said that Bill was the reference, and I know Bill very well. We both know Bill from the same from the same festival. He's been out to Midian several times for even other events. Like, we know Bill. Um, but it's interesting because seeing things in a different context and different style and all of that kind of thing, you don't always immediately. My brain didn't say, "Hey, that's Bill Duvendak." My brain said, "I know that face." Like, I know the energy in that card. I know who that is. But it'll be interesting for me too, looking through some of those, going, I know a lot of the people that are maybe models, but am I actually seeing them as those human people that I know, or am I just seeing really the energy of that archetype coming through? And
Right. And I specifically picked people that I felt embodied that energy.
mhm, yeah,
Um, and so like with Bill, he very much embodies the magician energy. Anyone that's ever met the man knows this. And added in, it was his writing that inspired the first card in the deck,
Yeah.
which made him kind of an operative in this whole magical process.
Yeah.
So it felt fitting. And later I found out it was his favorite card. So that was fun
Nice.
because his favorite card's the magician.
I can see that.
My drag sister, Candace, she embodies everything that the Empress. She walks the talk and I adore her.
Yeah.
And she was the perfect choice for the Empress card. William was the perfect choice for the Emperor card. Like he rules his life like the Emperor,
Yeah.
and he does it well and he does it with grace. And I couldn't think of anybody else I wanted for that card. And it's just like that through the whole thing was I reached out to people that I felt in my world embodied that archetype strongly,
Yeah. That's awesome.
just in their being and
Yeah.
how they approach things.
I
Because we
can,
all have those archetypes in our lives if we pay attention to everyone around us. We have them all in ourselves, everybody does. But at any given time, one of them is surfacing. And we
yeah.
all know the people in our friends groups that embody this.
Absolutely. Yeah. We just have some overlap. So I know you've got people in your friends group that are embodying those things, and I happen to know them too. So that's kind of fun. That's fun for me just on a personal level. But I think it's also really interesting. And I think you bring up a really good point that people can use to sort of tap into the imagery of any cards that they're working with is who in my life is embodying the magician, who in my life is embodying the empress, who in my life is, and that might be just right now kind of moment, or it might be, nope, the entire time I've known this person, nobody is more the Queen of Cups than this person is right here. So, when you pull that card, if you start to link that person in your own mind, you have that tag into what that energy is because you've had it manifested in your own life already. So I think that's
It
really
goes back
interesting.
to I haven't seen it done in forever, but back in the 90s, it was a thing to pull the warrant card, which is
Yeah.
a card out of the deck that embodied the person you're reading.
Yeah.
And that was the first card that went down. And then your Celtic Cross spread built from that card.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it done in forever,
Yeah. I
but
haven't.
it goes back on that mindset of like we all embody one of these at any given time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember that that's how I learned tarot at first was that you always had to have a querent card. And you could either do a random draw to select the querent card that was maybe a reflection of you right at the moment that maybe you weren't aware of and that your subconscious pulled from the deck for you, or you could have sort of the I am always this card. This is always my querent card, and you pull it. Um, I know that I remember hearing some folks saying that they didn't like that because then it eliminated that card from the deck for the rest of the reading. But I don't know. I feel like it's six of one, half a dozen of the other. I like the idea of there being a querent card, um, and I like using both methods of it. I know that for myself, the querent card changed for me over time. I think when I very first started, it honestly was always the Queen of Cups. That was the one that I always picked. um, but then later it became more of a Queen of Swords kind of place.
Whenever we would do a querent for me, it would be Queen of Wands or Queen of Swords.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. And it's funny because when you hear somebody talk about my card is this, I feel like you can definitely feel that. You're like, yep, that's a good card for you. That really is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, all
Fire
right.
and wind.
Fire and wind. Yeah. Yeah. My natal chart is actually almost all air and fire. So So it was interesting to me that I was very drawn early on to this, the Queen of Cups. And I see that more at the time as sort of being a product of, um, I was in a place where I was absorbing and reflecting a lot. I was still learning. I was very, very, I mean, I'm still learning, but I
Well,
was
yeah,
just
we're always,
beginning.
always learning.
Yeah. I was just in the process of beginning to learn about some of these things. And I really feel like that energy that I brought was more of the pool, that um, takes
At
in
some point
everything, but then reflects
outside of
out.
video, at some point outside of video, I'd love to talk to you about your natal chart because
Yeah.
I'm heavy-handed fire and water.
Yeah,
So
I am too. Like, there's very little, I think there's, I'm fire and air, and there's very, very little. I think there's like two places where water shows up in my chart, and maybe only one for earth. It's evidently I'm not very grounded, but
mine's weird. I've got an even splattering across the board of all four, and then I go just a little heavy-handed in these two.
okay.
Um, it's weird.
That is, you sound far more balanced than I am.
It's all an act.
You're like, these are the
Welcome
things
to
I'm
my
working
grand
on.
illusion.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah,
I have my ducks in a row.
going back to that perception and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so I have three questions that I want to ask everybody that I do an interview with, every interview guest. We'll call it for consistency, just so that there's
That
always.
works.
So the first question is, and there's a follow-up. Really, I do a little bit of Crowley math here, where I call it three questions, but really maybe it's five. So the first actual question is, what is the worst piece of magical advice that you have ever been given or that you've just heard being given to somebody else?
That spirit boards are evil portals.
Yes, yes, that is
And
truly
I
a
specifically say spirit boards because Ouija is a brand name.
yes. Yeah, I could not agree more. You know that I am a big lover of the spirit boards. I love a talking board. Um, love a
It's
talking
a
board.
fear of a tool, and I don't understand it. And no offense meant to anyone that believes this, but it's not. It is a tool, it is what you use it for.
Preach it, my sibling. You are saying
If you
exactly
go
the
to
thing.
play with it and you're scared that it's going to open a portal and cause something bad, guess what? You turned on a light for something like that to find you
That's right.
because that's the energy you're putting out when you touched it.
Yep, exactly
It's
right.
not the tool at fault.
No, no, the advice that I've well, and you've already kind of answered the second part of that question, which is what advice would you give in the place of that particular trash nugget? Um, and
It is a literal soapbox in my world. Well, as you
it is
know,
for
I've
me.
given classes on how to make and use spirit boards at festivals. So yeah, it's the first thing I open that class with is contrary to popular belief.
Right? Yeah, no, I've done a whole video on this channel too, just talking about that, which I guess now I'm obligated by YouTube policy to link to, I guess. I don't know. But
Woohoo!
woohoo. But yeah, it's then the thing that I always tell people is it is a tool just like your cell phone or the internet is a tool. It is a tool for communication. And if you go into it willy-nilly, you're gonna possibly see and hear some things that are gonna be quite upsetting because if you just start if you go onto the internet or pick up the phone and start dialing numbers and or you go on to just start typing in random words in configurations on the internet, you could go to some really strange places and some really potentially very upsetting places depending on what you find upsetting. So
Yep.
it doesn't make the internet evil. It makes your use of it at best um,
Naive.
naive. Yeah, yeah. Slapdash, maybe. Like, I'm trying to come up with another word that's kind of like careless, really. Like, it just kind of makes your use of that tool careless. So if you approach a talking board in a careless way or in a way where you're trying to be titillated, you're trying to be offended, you're trying to get the pants scared off of you or whatever garment of clothing you want scared off of you, um, you will absolutely find entities or websites, if we're talking about that, that are happy to oblige, absolutely happy to help you fulfill that intention. So,
Right. Like something, what part of my bio, where it states that I am a spiritual, I use that term very specifically. I
mhm,
work with the spirit realm. I work with the exercise of my clairs.
yeah,
Spiritual doesn't mean good or bad. It means working with the spirit realm.
does.
And I do oracle work. I work with psychopomp deities. I have a degree in funeral services. I work with that side of the veil. That's what I do. Scorpio, I mean, uh, to be typecasted by the universe. Uh,
Truly. Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, no, yeah. I
but
definitely get that.
just like on this plane of existence and this realm of existence, spirits and entities and otherworldly beings also have personalities, and not all of them are out to help you. Actually, a lot of them have been um, traumatized by magicians
Yeah.
threatening them and
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. I
So,
talk
a lot of time, and I'm pulling from your book specifically because I'm I'm uh I'm paraphrase quoting you
Yeah, I was gonna say you
from
are singing my
Witch's
song.
Key.
Yeah, yeah. No, I talk about that quite a lot in the Witch's Key to the Legion, that it's that there are some spirits that have definitely been roughly handled by living, breathing spirits, like living, breathing human types who um have, yeah, just, and that's perhaps a whole other Reddit, but yeah, it's
And whenever you're working with spirit boards or divination or oracle or scrying or any of the above, you have just as much chance of running into the nice, sweet lady next door that bakes everybody's cookies and the teenager down the street that punctures your tire because he was bored last night,
right. Yeah. And the sexual
and
predator
everything
who's,
in between.
yeah, everything in between, the predators who are actually trying to hurt whoever they can, right? Like, because there are predators who are enfleshed and there are predators who are not. And there
And that
really
I
isn't much difference between the two, except that one has a body most of the time
and
and one doesn't have a body most of the time. So,
right. And actually, before I start making my bowls, I'm going to write up something about that so that it can go with every bowl because of the way I'm making them. I'm collecting crossroads glass at the four major kinds of crossroads because each one has its own energy. And then I am making clay bowls and inlaying the glass in the bottom of them for scrying.
this sounds amazing.
I figured you would appreciate them.
I do appreciate it. I like the way your brain works, and I can't wait to see the results.
But my first one, I'm using railroad glass.
Nice. Oh, so cool. Okay, I'm going to ask you the second question. Sorry to abruptly change. I'm going to switch
Oh, no
gears.
worries. Go for it. I skittered off to the side.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. I already anticipate that the biggest challenge that I'm going to have with doing interviews is that I just really like to talk to people, and they're going to be an hour and a half to 3 hours long every time I do one. So, but that's okay. And
Same,
I
same.
I really appreciate you talking with me and taking this time. So I'm going to ask you the second of the three questions that I plan on asking everybody. What is a book that you would recommend to folks who are interested in the types of magic that you practice?
Um, well, if I have to give just one, it'd be modern magic
Modern Magic by Donald Michael Craig.
because it is literally the one that set me on the path I'm on now.
Excellent.
Because I hold degrees in both Gardnerian and Alexandrian Wicca. And I ran the gambit of Wicca, and it didn't fit for me.
Right.
And when I read that book, it put it more in a science format, and it made more sense to me. It was more personalized to how I approach the world.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and it's still a good book to this day to go back on. And it's a good starter for understanding the formula for ceremonial.
It really is. Yeah. No, it's an excellent recommendation. It's a great primer for anybody who's just wanting to get clear headed about what magic is and how it generally operates, and that then you can get into lots of different magical systems, even if they do maybe come from a different religious or cultural context, but be able to have that sort of metaphysical framework. I think that's an excellent recommendation. Um, what so the follow-up question to this is, what is the book that you recommend to people who just stand still long enough for you to throw book recommendations at them? It's basically, what's your very favorite book that you're like, everybody should read this book? Doesn't have to be magical, but it can be.
Okay. It wouldn't be my very favorite book because my very favorite book is very controversial, and I do not suggest other people read it half the time because you have to be a certain kind of individual to want to read that book, and that's Clockwork Orange. But there's two, depending on who I'm talking to, and it's either Stranger in a Strange Land by Heinlein or Fahrenheit 451 by Bradbury.
You have named some of my
Like,
favorite books too.
to the point that when COVID started, I went live on Facebook and read both of them live on Facebook every day until they were done, because I found out that a lot of people had not read either one.
Have never read them.
And
Yeah,
so
and it's
I was like,
foundational.
you know what? Y'all need to read Fahrenheit 451. Here, I'm going to read it for you. And I had people that tuned in for the whole book
That's
that had never
awesome.
read it before.
Fahrenheit 451 is a book I used to teach when in case people are just tuning in and don't know this about me, I used to be a high school English teacher, and I taught in all of the years that I taught, I always had freshmen for at least one section of freshman English. And when I was teaching in Los Angeles, we had a curriculum that we shared. We kind of rotated when we were doing certain things. They didn't have to happen in the particular order, but Fahrenheit 451 was one of the books that all freshmen at the school that I taught at was going to read. And one of the things that I remember about that book specifically was having students not very excited about it at the beginning. And some of that was just maybe they weren't excited about reading. They didn't really have good reading experiences. Some of it's just that it's in their minds, this was the early 2000s, like literally the year 2000 to 2003 is when I was, no, 99 to 2003 was when I was in Los Angeles teaching. Um, so I had just a lot of students that were like, oh, this book was written decades ago and it's going to be boring. And then they get into it and they realize it might have been written decades ago, but it is talking about themes that are very present with us now. And I think even more so than they were in the early 2000s.
Oh,
And
very
some of
much
the,
so, especially the walls with the televisions in them.
yeah, the
That
technology he
is
describes, we have.
literally modern day.
You're wearing right now the seashells that he talks about in there, like
Yep.
the
Yep.
earbuds are, and that technology did not exist. He was very clear headed about his vision of tech. And of course, we see that a lot with science fiction where it becomes science reality because scientists are like, I want
Grew
that.
up reading science
Yeah.
fiction going, that's cool.
How do we make
Let's
that
make
happen?
that.
Yeah. How do we do that? And Stranger in a Strange Land, yes, yes, yes. Read those books, people. Those are good books.
Stranger in a
Yeah.
Strange Land. I it's hard for me to reread books because of the way my memory works.
Mhm.
They they're not as fun for me because by the time I'm through the first chapter, I've remembered everything.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but Stranger in a Strange Land is one of those that I make it a point to reread it about every 5 to 10 years, and I pick something else up out of it that I didn't really broke before.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're pointing out that it's probably time for a reread for me of that one because it's probably been, gosh, I think I read it last in 2008, 2007, 2008, somewhere in there, right before I started coming to festival actually. So, and it was a favorite of one of my poly partners, and which is significant too, even in just in terms of the book itself, which touches on themes of polyamory and it just touches on so much that has been very meaningful to me. And uh, it's, yeah, excellent book. So those are excellent recommendations. Not that you need my stamp of approval, but you've got it anyway. Um,
It was
and
hard to pick one.
I bet,
And
well,
I didn't with the fiction books. Like
that's all
it was
right.
hard to pick one. On the occult books, it was really hard to pick one. But I felt that it probably the one that started me where I'm at would be the better
Yeah,
out of like the three bookshelves I'm currently looking at full of
right,
occult books.
right. Yeah, no, but I think that's an excellent recommendation too for somebody that's just getting started. That would be a great place to to start from and explore. So thank you. So the third of the three questions, the third official question of the three questions is to name a YouTube channel or a podcast, an event, a project of somebody else's, not yours, not mine, um, that you would like to promote and bring awareness to.
Um, yes, I would like to bring awareness to to the blog that Scott Stenwick does. He's in the process of writing a book about thelemic sorcery. It's specifically called Thelemic Sorcery.
Nice.
And it's the meat and potatoes practical magic condensed from thelemic magic.
Yeah,
I've done the book cover for it. So,
nice.
but it's Aniel and Aniel. I can never pronounce it right. I will send you the link so that you can put it in the video for everyone.
I will do that.
But he does a blog, um, and I always try and send him a little bit more traffic for that because he's pretty well known in the occult community for his Enochian books.
Hmm.
But he also is a fiction writer.
Excellent.
And so, and I highly suggest this fiction because I've read it. But he's working on thelemic sorcery, and he's also working on a book about runic sorcery.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
So, but his blog's a great place for keeping up with all of that that's coming out. Um, so yeah, and I will send you the blog link.
absolutely. And I'll include those down below. I'll probably even splash them up on the screen at some point. Here, here.
Here, it's right here.
It's
No,
right here. Yeah. Yeah, I actually have I can't remember if it was three or four books of his that I bought this year at Babylon Rising because he gave probably one of the
was
best
it the
talks.
Enochian?
It was Enochian. Yeah.
It
All of it
was
was
three.
Enochian.
He's
Three.
done three.
Yeah. Hey, that was probably one of the best workshops and experiences as sort of an introductory place for Enochian magic that I've ever seen. So, and that's saying a lot because we've got a lot of people out there that know their way around some Enochian. But I just really appreciate anybody who's able to contextualize it, break it down, make it seem anything, make any kind of magical concepts be more approachable for folks that are interested in it. Because I think especially when you're talking about things like Enochian or goetic or any there's a hurdle that people have to get past of this is so much. It's so much to
There's
know
a
and it's so
learning
different.
curve. Like
Yeah.
most of the books that you come across assume that you already know what they're talking about when you open it.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of 101 books on certain topics, but once you start getting into some of the set practices like Enochian or Golden Dawn or Thelema, it's kind of assumed you already know XYZ, and not as it's usually not assumed that that's the first book you picked up.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And
And sometimes it is.
sometimes it is. Yeah. I would actually say we referenced earlier one of my books, The Witch's Key to the Legion. And I think that's a mistake that I made in the beginning. The first edition of that book is honestly probably not very useful for most people. I was so excited about bringing out sort of the new messages that we were getting and the new interpretations that we were getting to contextualize in a 21st century way about goetic practice. But I very much took the approach at the time of if you don't already have a good basis in magic, this maybe isn't a book that you should even be looking at. Like, have your basics down and then come to this. But when I revised it, I listened to a lot of the feedback that I was getting from people on places like Amazon reviews and that kind of thing that were saying, I don't even know how to get into this. Like, it looks like it could be interesting, but I don't know what to do with it. So, um, yeah, I think that being able to contextualize and help people approach it, and that's one of the things that I found that Scott Stenwick very much did. So we will be sure to make sure I'll even pop it up again. Here's his contact info all over
Yeah,
again.
he's described to me he wanted basically a spell book for
Yeah,
Enochian that he could just open it, flip, and cast from and work directly from. And
yeah,
so that's what the very first book
yeah,
was that's what he wanted, so he made it a book.
and it's awesome. Like it's very, very good for that.
It make sense to me. And Enochian's always been kind of like it's a whole lot.
It's a lot.
It
Yeah, it feels like a
is a
lot.
lot.
It feels like a lot.
I mean, it's not once you like start learning things, but starting out, it's kind of one of the intimidating ones.
It can be. Yeah, it can be. Yeah. Okay, so going to focus just on you for a second here as we wrap up. If there are people who are watching this that want to connect with you and your work, I'm sure that there are going to be. Where can they find you? And we'll put all of these things that you're about to say in the description box too, but I'd like for you to say them verbally so that people that are absorbing the content that way get it.
Uh, Linktree embalmed apple. If you type embalmed apple into Google, the first three pages are me.
Awesome.
um, I have a very unique art company name.
Yeah.
I am on Twitch 4 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Patreon, uh, Big Cartel. I have a spring shop for merch. I'm everywhere on the internet, but my link tree has all of those links in one wonderful little concise area. It even has an open link to join my art Discord where I celebrate my community once a week and share your art with
Nice.
my stream.
Nice.
So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to make sure, again, all those links, including the link tree, which is the link that rules all the other links.
it is. I took the QR code for it and put it on the banner for my booth.
It's smart. That's smart. Yeah. So we'll make sure everybody has those. And I cannot thank you enough for joining me today and talking. It has been a pleasure. And well, I will not be surprised if I invite you back on later as other projects come out, if that's something that you're up for.
I am totally up for that. Like I said, the Walking with the Gods, I'm going live with that Kickstarter in spring. I'm chugging along on the Tarot Perception. I have the Maledictive Tarot that I've already created the High Priestess for, and that's a left-hand path visual. Um,
My interest is piqued.
I've got my poetry and art book that I'm trying to have out in time for Yule. And it's a pairing of my poetry and my artwork.
Nice.
And then I've got my book I'm working on, painted for adorn thyself, painted for the gods, going into the ritual and magical use of makeup.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Yeah. And we didn't necessarily, I mentioned that you were a performance artist as well, and you've mentioned drag and diva work several times. So um, people, if they're paying attention, they've picked up on the fact that those things exist, but that
and
might
there's
be,
a link to my YouTube in the link tree so you can watch actual performances.
that's awesome. Yes.
They're all like several years old, but because it's hard to get recordings of your live performances.
I get that. When I was dancing, I found it difficult to get recordings of those performances too, or at least good recordings. Sometimes they can be challenging to actually
Yes,
arrange.
depending on the venue, the sound system, the crowd. Yeah,
Yeah,
there are
yeah,
several that I'm just like, this was a great recording, except for I can hear the entire conversation of the table next to the person recording.
right. Yeah,
And it's some stuff I don't want on my YouTube because it's some personal stuff they were talking about. And I'm
right,
just like, aw.
right. They're going through a divorce and you're performing. You're like, oh, maybe. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you, G, for joining me today. We'll talk again some more. And as far as folks watching at home or listening or however you're consuming this content, um, we hope that you found today's broadcast inspiring, useful, informative, uh, clarifying. Bless us with the magic of the like button because that magic is real and definitely helps to
Totally blessed with the share button.
share button. Yes, yeah. Yeah, interacting with the content at all is helpful for the way the spirits that are algorithms work out there. So, um,
I've referred to them as the algor demons.
algor demons, yeah. Yeah, they really are.
It's
That's
the internet goetics
it
of the
is.
algor demons.
It is. And I think there are some smart magicians out there that are starting to work with those algor demons. Um,
I've seen it in the chaos circles.
yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it in some other places too. I've seen it in. I'm quite involved with the water priestess community, and
Okay.
I've seen that there are some water priestesses out there that are quite linked in to the idea of the particular kinds of symbies and spirits that are running the internet for us right now. So I think there's something to that. That might be a whole other discussion topic someday on here.
So many discussion topics. We can talk forever. But
We can. Um,
thank you very, 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 very much for having me on
I
today.
really
I very
appreciate it.
much appreciate you. I am very flattered
Well, thank
that
you.
you would want to speak to me
Absolutely.
um,
Well, I always enjoy
because
speaking to you.
uh,
And I'm sure that the viewers who have watched today will be able to understand exactly why. Lots of interesting things. You've shared so much of your process and a bit of your inner world. And just thank you. Thank you so much for that. Oh, and I'm going to
thank
just
you for having me.
hit my mic. Yeah, absolutely. All right. And with that, I'm going to sign off from the YouTubes and click end, and I'll see everybody back here. There's probably like a screen coming up for people that are watching of the next video. So check that out until the next one actually uploads fresh next week. Bye bye.